Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
So welcome to part 2 of the Black Spy podcast's last week's recordings. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back to last week, have a listen. But this is part 2.
So can you tell me, what would you say you should be doing, potentially, or general parameters, because everybody's different. Let's get that up first. General parameters about what one should be doing or what one could be doing at 20, which will mean that later on you don't suffer too negatively, because we're all going to have some negative, but too negatively. What would you say?
Well, the one thing that everybody can do, and this is something that everybody can do, is actually connect with their body more. And actually, how am I feeling? How is my body feeling? Everybody can do it. But most people don't. Most people live in their brains, live in their heads. They're just so disconnected, you know, and actually realize that we are one whole system. And this is something else that, you know, sort of allopathic medicine, so the medicalization of everything, it puts us into parts. Well, we're not parts. You know, if something's wrong with one part of our body, there's going to be a knock-on effect in other parts of our body. And often the symptoms that we get are not the root of the problem. So we have to connect and we have to, you know, sort of listen to what our body is telling us. And the things that we need to start doing in our 20s is like literally make sure that we are hydrated all the time. You know, it's like there's so much in sort of the literature, particularly for women, is that you need to look after your skin in your 20s, otherwise you'll look like an old hag in your 50s. You know,
Dr. Rachel, can I ask you? Sorry, Dr. Rachel, I don't want to stop your flow, but you've hit on something which has been advertised massively about. When you say hydrated, what do you mean? Tell us absolutely what you think. What should be.
Oh my God, I'm gonna jump in here. I'm gonna jump in here because Dr. Rachel changed my life on this, right? Right, like lemon water is basically like Dr. Rachel's answer to everything. Right? Like I'm not.
It's not an answer to everything, but it's an answer to a lot, Fergus.
but I now before I even move in the morning, I like drink a pint of lemon water.
Yeah. So is that correct then? Lemon water. What do you mean by lemon water?
Like literally just, you know, a slice of lemon in some boiled water first thing in the morning. That it's so good for the liver. It helps.
Great. I do that. I do hot water. I don't generally put lemon in mine, but I do have hot water.
Put lemon in it. Yeah.
Okay.
Put lemon in it. And what's also good as well, because and not many people realize this, right? As a liquid, water has the toughest surface level. You know, and I realized this the hard way. I've had numerous operations throughout my life, and it was like literally I was drinking needles. And at the time, I sort of worked it out. My eldest, I think she was doing chemistry A level at the time, and I said to her, you know, it's got such a tough surface level. How am I getting hydrated? She looked at me like I was stupid because she thinks she's a proper scientist because she's an engineer. She's an engineer now. So that's proper. I'm not a proper scientist because I'm a neuroscientist. I just mess around with people's brains. That's not proper science, apparently. And she just went, well, of course. She said, how do you think that boats float? All right, I feel a bit stupid now. So putting a drop of anything in water is going to actually help it to be absorbed into cells better.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Doesn't it make, when I say it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Now, another thing that's really good is that people, they're generally the electrical impulses in the body are really sluggish because we don't look after ourselves properly. at all. So putting a bit of salt in water, not a lot, just like a little pinch of salt, will help the ions and help the electrical impulses. Then we're going to get more energy from the mitochondria within which is basically our energy powerhouse in a cell. We're going to get more. So when people are really fatigued and they don't know why, they're saying, oh, I'm doing all of this, I'm doing all of this. Often it's the electricity in the body that's just not working properly, just not releasing the energy. So these are really simple things. And this is why it's not widely out there, because
and it's not costing anything either.
Yeah, who's making money from telling people to put a bit of lemon or a pinch of salt in a bottle of water?
Not costing anything.
Yeah. But it's like the one thing that's made a difference with my children is when I said to them, if you are not hydrated, your brain's going to shrink. And they
so how much water must you drink to be hydrated?
Well, this is it, a lot more than you're told to.
Right.
And it's really interesting because I've seen in sort of mainstream media as well, like say, oh, you don't need to drink as much water. You need to have sort of watery foods. And yeah, that does the job. But generally, most people don't realise that you're meant to have a wee like a couple of times in the hour, and it should be really pale.
Right.
Now, most people can go through a working day and not have a wee since they've got up in the morning after waking up from the sleep. So they have a wee first thing in the morning and then go right the way through the day. And you are so dehydrated.
Right.
Your brain,
so
and I always look at it,
so let me ask you a different question then. So if you went 3 or 4 times for a wee, right, or 5 times, let's argue, would you not have some sort of infection though? Why should you go so often?
What you can, if you're dehydrated and then you think I'm going to hydrate myself, so you need to do that. You're going to have a transition where your body goes into a little bit of panic that actually we've got to, so you'll wee a lot more. But after about 10 to 14 days, you'll settle down, and your hydration levels will be so much better. And this is really interesting because when people talk about sort of a mental health pandemic and everything like this. One of the major things that can cause unwellness and feeling depressed and feeling down is inflammation in the body, which is exacerbated if you're dehydrated.
Sure.
So it's like, and this is what I mean. It's like, unless you get the basics in looking after yourself right, and parents should be doing this with children. Absolutely, parents should be doing this with children. But when you are have at the age of having autonomy yourself, if you are not doing the basic things like making sure you're hydrated, making sure that you have adequate rest, making sure your sleep's really good, having good connection with people.
Again, sorry, Dr. Rachel, sorry, I'm trying to drag out from you. How much sleep do we need then?
Well, people need between 7 and 9 hours of decent sleep, but it's not just that, it's the quality of the sleep. You need to have deep sleep, and the things that interrupt the body going into deep sleep are blue lights, doing too much on a screen during the day, the certain things, not having enough rest. So you need to have and you need to be asleep before sort of about 10 o'clock at night, because at 10 o'clock...
I'm going to jump in here because we've now changed our life, actually. Dr. Rachel told me that you need to be asleep between 11 and 2.
Yeah.
So the hard drive, essentially the hard drive.
So 11 and 2 in the afternoon?
No.
Or at night, sorry. Okay, at night. Yeah.
No. Wouldn't that be awesome? No, unfortunately not, Carlton. Unfortunately not. 11 at night and 2 in the morning, right? But it's when your brain rewires the hard drive. So essentially you have to be asleep between those hours, right? I feel massively empowered by that. But also, do you know what? I've spoken to Dr. Rachel about this before, and I think it's maybe a thing, but to be honest, like, I know that I do 11 billion positive things for my own personal well-being and for the kids' well-being or whatever, right? So I'm considering chucking my Fitbit out the window.
Right, because you don't think that's necessary, or what's the circumstance? Or are you against the Fitbit, Dr. Rachel?
Right, I have a very interesting take on any kind of wearable, and I have one myself.
Yeah.
but I had to get rid of it because I think that they're very good at if you've never done anything around health and well-being, they're good because it creates sort of motivation and interest, but they very quickly become a tyrant. And human beings are really clever in that they'll do workarounds, and they'll convince themselves that they're actually doing stuff that's good for them, but they're not. And it's a time, and you have to remember that every kind of wearable works on an algorithm,
of course,
which doesn't factor in that on a day when they think you should be having a rest day, you actually full of energy, so you want to do something, or a day when they say you should be doing, I don't know, an hour's cardio. Actually, I feel really bad because I didn't sleep too good last night, so I can't do. So it's not human enough. And this is what I was talking about, the connection to your body. We don't need an algorithm to tell us if we're okay. Stop outsourcing the connection with your body to something else. If you want to wear a wearable because you're like thinking, I'm really going to set myself a challenge in that I want to go from 5 kilometers walking a day to 10 kilometers walking a day, and I'm going to do that, and then it's good for that because it's a good measurement, and it's actually just objective. If you're using it to try and convince yourself that you're getting better, and what you're really doing is just cheating with the algorithm, then it's not good. You know, and I have to say, at one point, the algorithm on my wearable issued me the challenge where I had to literally burn 36,000 calories in a month. 36,000 calories. Yeah. Otherwise, I didn't win the challenge. Now, for somebody who's recovering from some sort of eating disorder, that would be absolutely tragic.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I would say that they're a good servant, but what you're actually trying to do with it, and if it's, you know, I don't know, I see so many people who they're not even concentrating on the workout because they're messing with the watch, or they're messing with the belt because it's not working properly, and it's just like it detracts from what you're trying to do. As human beings, we should be connecting with ourselves. And like I say to people, you know, we need to have sort of an aerobic heart rate for at least 10 minutes once a day. Well, what's that? It's 60 to 65% of your maximum heart rate. And like people are, oh, well, I need a wearable. No, you just need, you'll feel a little bit breathless. You can't have a proper conversation. You'll be a little bit pink in the face because you'll be a bit hotter, and you'll be sweating a little bit. That is 60 to 65%. You don't need a wearable to tell you that. And I think,
if you go above that?
If you go above that, it depends what kind of outputs you want. But that is the minimal that you need to do to be well. You just need to do 10 minutes.
Now,
once
can
a
I ask you
day.
a question? Would you see weight in this? The fact that many people are clinically overweight now.
Well, I would say that it's more it's really difficult because I myself have been clinically morbidly obese, but it's because my body wasn't working properly. Right. And I see lots of people now, I had to, you know, my body wasn't producing the right hormones, and no matter what I did, it would never have worked. And I look at so many people, and they're part of this commoditization of not being aesthetically pleasing. You know, and because it was really interesting because at my heaviest, I still did military fitness in the park. And what I would say is, you know, it's very different whether your weight is your weight because of the food that you are eating. And this is some other really interesting research, and I think it needs investigating more, is that even for people who've had a gastric bypass, if you have an insecure or avoidant attachment style, so you do not have a good way of relating to other human beings, then you are less likely to lose weight and keep it off, even if you've had like an operation, if you have mechanical intervention. Right. You know, so how we relate to other human beings is very much part of our body's ability to deal with food, you know, and I think it's really, really interesting, and it warrants more because, you know, we are living in such a false way. And obviously there's a lot about the Frankenstein food and how, but it's not just about that. Right. It's also about how we relate to other human beings, and we are living in a society that's predominantly lonely, and also which makes people feel less valued, less like people that they matter, and less like they have an opinion. Now, when you don't feel valued, then you have no control over what happens. The brain sends out a stress response. When you are in a stress response, you do not digest food properly. And it's very interesting, you know, it's really how things all come together.
Well, it's extremely interesting because
and also just to jump in, right? To something Dr. Rachel's told me historically, right? You said to me that refugees, when they're given their per diem money, would rather spend it on high quality olive oil than buy cheap food.
It was like, you know, it was like, you know, it's really interesting to sort of you know, look at sort of the dietary needs, and these particular refugees. This was about 10-12 years ago when I was writing a strategy on new and emerging communities and how to support them best. And it was, you know, one of the things that they really struggled with was lack of availability of foods that were relatively, and of course this was before the cost of living, relatively cheap from where they came from, and very much a high fat sort of medium protein diet. And we know from multiple, you know, research models that, you know, a high fat diet is good for the brain and it's good for the body. But of course, you know, there's been so much advertising and marketing that actually, you know, even now most people will reach for the 0% fat stuff, and it's just like, never do that. You know, they laugh at me in the local coffee place because you know, I'm a whole milk cappuccino kind of girl, and I'm like, I don't understand anybody having a skinny cappuccino, because what's the point in that? There's no good in it whatsoever, you know. And it's just, you know, you have, and again it gets back to the influences, doesn't it? Marketing, advertising, it's really powerful.
Extremely. And not realistic in many ways, because again, what I would say is, and I've not done the research, but maybe you can tell me, we seem to have this proposition, let's argue, that they have skinny women who they dress well, don't get me wrong, dress very, very well, and therefore it makes them look attractive in the clothing that they wear. But out with the clothing, many can be very, very skinny. Now, if you looked at a male normal man looking at what he would desire, and this is, and somehow even that's negative now today, when actually this is the way the world works, because we're animals and we're looking at what we desire in order to come together and make a unit that we can have our offspring. So if you look at that, generally they want, for want of a better word that everybody will know, the more Marilyn Monroe type person than the skinny Twiggy type person. But the system is trying to tell us, and seems to be telling women and doing very, very good job at it, that Twiggy is what we want rather than Marilyn Monroe. And I'm just using those two older things because most people understand that, those two. And
again, it's like, you know, this, you know, the aesthetics that people are told that this is what is normal in society, and that's really powerful, and especially when that's reinforced over and over again. Now, at my heaviest, I'm you know, share this, at my heaviest I'm just trying, 136 kilogram, right? And now I'm
it's like 11 stones, isn't it?
It's like 11 stone. No, at my heaviest I think it was like, in real money I think it's over 22 stone. I've only just been able to talk about it because and I tell you what, at my now I've sort of settled it at sort of 63 kilograms. So, you know, more than half of my body weight, and how I'm treated differently now.
Oh, massively, I would imagine.
But it made me so angry because I actually eat more food now because my body works, you know. I, you know, when at my heaviest, I would have been classed as having an eating disorder, but it was like, you know, through no fault of my own, my body didn't work properly, and then I had this operation, and then I lost all that weight literally in 7 months. So it was a very big sort of transition. In a very short space of time, and I was treated completely differently. And I was like, it was such a, for me, sort of working with the brain and how people are, it was such a wake up call. But it's like really weird because I am a different person now.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to go through the transition of learning to be who I was. And I look now at sort of the aesthetics of it and how people are, put into a mold and how, people should be and need to be. And it's just so damaging. And it's not just, from the feminine perspective. You look at how males are portrayed that they should be, and it's quite far away from who they really, from a neurobiological perspective should be. We're literally fitting into what a very small minority of people are saying that we need to, just to make them richer. That in effect is what is happening here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do we do to combat this? I mean, obviously, Firgas has taken on a lot of what you've said, and maybe Firgas can articulate what that's done for her in terms of taking on a lot of what you've said, and how that has, I'm guessing, improved your life, Firgas. Is that correct? Don't laugh too much.
I was hoping that she said, oh yeah, it's improved my life, maybe, but. I suppose, before she sort of describes this, I suppose from my perspective is that I do not tell people who they should be, I don't say people this is what your life should be like.
This is what I was about to say, right? The reason why your listeners should subscribe and follow Dr. Rachel is because she tells you the truths as they are.
Okay.
whether you need to hear it or not. But let's just circle back to the menopause and the news agenda. There are two massive stories in the news at the moment. So Philip Schofield's story and Prince Harry. But are we barking up the wrong tree to be thinking about this in a newsjacking and media agenda? Or should we be thinking actually about the individuals, their space in their life, and how life might be affecting them right now?
No, Fergus, you wanted to bring it back to this. This is great because this is a subject that we are looking at, and I think that's correct. But does Schofield warrant this, or is it warrant all this attention I'm talking about, or is it your profession, and I'll say that loosely, which is making people see this as something which is way beyond what it actually is? So the reason why I'm saying this is because when we're looking at this matter seriously, the menopause, the losing of testosterone, and what used to be called a midlife crisis, didn't it? Men trying to do something to hold on to what they previously had.
It was Porsches and divorces, wasn't it?
Yeah, Porsches and divorces, or they want to be be manly again. But obviously you can't be that now today from point one. So my question is, not just to focus in on Schofield and Harry, but to focus in on how the media is pushing to people now what is acceptably manly. Because basically what they're saying is that manly, ipso facto, means you must be a misogynist. That's where we've got to now, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's a pretty accurate depiction. But I also have to say as well that quite a lot of women that I come across are also misogynistic.
That's basically what I was about to say, Rachel. That's basically what I was about to say. It's like, actually, I think the menopause side of it we've kind of nailed, but we're in a harsher on ourselves than needs be.
Yeah. I think also as well, you know, because I was, you know, I don't really tend to delve much into the murky world of he said, she said. But I have to say that it seems to me that when your time is up in media, your time is up. And then, you know, for me, there's such a lot of dishonesty and deceit with that, because you get all the rats that come out and say, oh, you know, I knew this 6 years, you know, and all of that. And it's just, well, if you knew it and you were concerned about it, you didn't shout loud enough. Exactly. You had a platform. Exactly. You could have said this before. And you know, and I don't know Philip Schofield.
Do you know what? I like, one thing I would say, in the landscape of crisis management in PR, it's normally most advisable to consider everything but actually do nothing, right? Now, in the landscape of Philip Schofield, bear in mind his brother
absolutely.
Was you know, incarcerated the week before. There was obviously something going on there, right? Under normal circumstances, if I were head of crisis comms for the BBC, right, if it wasn't for his brother, right, I would have completely said do nothing, right? But yet, in the Philip Schofield thing, they've not only done everything, but they've also commissioned, like, you know, a documentary and X, Y, and Z, right?
But why is it so important? Why is this guy, who basically just reads an auto cue, why is he so important? Explain that to me. In your media world, why is it so important?
Well, this is the whole point, Carlton, right? This is the whole point of why you do nothing, right? In the landscape of crisis comms, this is a whole point of why you do nothing, right? It's because why is it so important? Because it will just die down, right? But if there were ever going to be a prophetic analogy, let's just think about the fact that most people in Britain, their first association with Philip Schofield would have been like in the broom cupboard with Gordon the Gopher. If there was ever going to be something, a metaphoric play out of anything.
It's like kind of gone full circle, hasn't it?
It's gone full circle, right? But if he'd have come to me for advice, I would have said do nothing, because quite often in the landscape of crisis, you just, the best thing to do is do nothing. But obviously there is another agenda. That's why he's done a documentary. That's why he's done X, Y, and Z, right? So there is obviously another agenda, right? So
when you say agenda, you mean there's other information that hasn't yet come out. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So exactly. So the top of my list would be that his brother, you know, got sent down for child abuse, and I personally think that that's why all of this has come to light.
I'll tell you how I read it. I read it this way. I read it that he was told to say something negative about his brother because his brother was sent down for child abuse. So he did, and he said he disowned him. Now, I would have thought that was for him a very poor thing to do.
Do you want my take on it?
Yes, please.
I think that he thought he was untouchable because he has been for so long. Right. And I think that you're foolish if you think that. I think when you've had sycophants all these years, you look at everything, how they speak to the general public, and I'm putting, you know, his co-host on this morning, that they are so patronizing. They are so virtue signaling. They convince themselves that they do good things all the time. And you do that for long enough, you convince yourself that that's who you are and you're untouchable. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Because the pictures and the little clips that I saw of him is a man in shock. There's nothing else. He was shocked. He was completely in shock. The language that he used, how he was behaving, how he tried to garner sympathy. You know, his daughter had been on suicide watch. My take on it is that he never expected this to happen because he convinced himself he'd done nothing wrong.
Okay. So, and maybe he hasn't, because we can't say he has, can we? We can't say that, can we?
No, because
so maybe he hasn't.
You don't know.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree I completely 100% agree with Dr. Rachel. That's kind of where I was going, but she obviously kind of circled to the point more, like quicker. But if we were going to like ring fence a menopause, could we be saying that this was a menopause issue?
Why would we say it's a menopause issue?
Well, why? Could we? I don't know. Would we? Would we?
No.
I don't know.
I don't think we could. Look, if again, I know nothing about. I don't really watch the fella. I've got to say that, and I never really have, so I don't really know much about him. But if we were taking him at face value of what I've heard from others and what he's said, apparently, right? If we take him at face value, he basically has done something I do know about, what basically most very, very important politicians throughout the centuries have potentially been involved in. Not most, wrong word. Some very important politicians have been involved in. You go back to the 19th century, because they've been gay but pretended they weren't. And they've had marriages of convenience. And everybody has known in the know that they are marriages of convenience. Okay? This is a political. Just one second. This is a political reality. It has nothing to do with menopause.
Right. Look. His brother has been sent down for 12 years now.
Yeah, well, that's his brother.
For 11 acts of sexual offences.
We can't turn around and say what your brother does. I'm trying to be absolutely fair here. If we started saying just because somebody's brother, mother, uncle, father, whatever does something, that you are also afflicted by the same thing, that would be wrong. So I'm trying to separate the two. I know the newspapers want to make the connection, but I'm trying to separate the two. There are many brothers, many sisters, many whatever, who are doing things that the other parties do not do. And if we go down the route of saying, just because your brother's done that, you must be like that, that would be wrong. What we can say is, and he's accepted it, is that he was gay, and he knew that he was gay for many a year, and that he's then made some attraction to a guy. But he hasn't done anything, and the guy's saying he hasn't done anything, whilst it was illegal to do something. That's all we can say. Now, if this guy turns around and says, well, I was only saying that because he paid me 250 grand, that would be something different. But as it sits now, we've got nothing it's like looking for Cliff Richards, isn't it? It's like people say, oh, Cliff Richards must be. Well, no. If nobody's come forward to say Cliff's doing anything, why are we saying Cliff's doing something? This is what the BBC did. This is what I'm saying. This is a media type of thing that I dislike. Because at the end of the day, unless you've got some evidence, and that's my problem, because I'm thinking like a police talk about evidence. If you've got some evidence, then great, say it. Well, if you've got no evidence, please don't throw some fire on the water and say there's evidence there, because it's not evidence, it's just speculation. So this guy has been speculated. Now, I admit with you that this guy clearly has bought into the thing that I'm the greatest thing in the world, but so has his partner on the seat with him. I mean, the way she started her speech, how do you guys feeling now? You know, like
it was so patronising.
Absolutely. So, but of course, that's been accepted for now. Who knows? Something might happen later on when something changes, but that's been accepted for now. So what I'm trying to say is that why are we giving him so much airtime? Because it really angers me that this guy gets airtime when, let's go to Harry. Harry is bringing things up that are really important. Really important about what the press is doing, right?
Yeah.
Really important about editors whose job it is to know where stories come from. I'm not going to buy from any editor, whether it be from your ex-boss, Fergus, right? Or whether it be from...
I know. And also...
They don't know where the stories come from. I'm not having that. And if the judge then puts and says, "Oh," then the whole system's coming behind these people and looking after them, because that shouldn't be a job.
But actually, Carlton, I think there's a similarity, there's a polarity here. We all actually come to the Prince Harry narrative from the same angle.
Yeah.
And actually, one thing Dr. Rachel said to me when she first read the book, which I haven't actually narrated for your listeners, was that she said that he was paying an emotional tribute to his mum.
Yeah, the lad doesn't deny that. That's the beauty of it. He actually doesn't deny that he's damaged, does he?
He doesn't deny it, but I said that you'd convinced me of the authenticity of it.
Yes.
But actually, Dr. Rachel has sort of super validated the authenticity, because some of the things that she said to me from reading it take what you said, there's a level of authenticity because he was in the military, and
he was in action.
And he was in action, and in that way, you can't lie. But Dr. Rachel then said that there were other things that she sort of took that narrative on a little bit further, right? So I think we are all in agreement that we're all on Team Harry's team.
Yeah, and I'm not just going to say it's because it's Harry. I'm going to say because he's actually looking at things, to my mind, from a steadfast point of perspective. He's saying, I'm damaged, I accept it, I put my hands up, I'm not the greatest fella, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other. My mother died, it affected me, I went into the army, it's affected me, all of this what's gone on. So he's saying that, basically, he's putting his hands up. And I believe there are many, many people in the military, have military connections, in the intelligence security services, I'd connect if they've been in conflict, were those connections, or in the police, where they've been in conflict, were those traumas are there, and you hide those traumas, right? That's what's happening. This guy's openly said, this is what the score is. I'm putting my cards down. And he's then saying, but you media enhanced my trauma throughout my life because you were doing something illegal. And now you're trying to say you never knew about it. You're trying to say it's one or two rogue folk knocking about, you never knew about it, especially for the top people, the editors. They're saying the editor who's paid massive amounts of money to make sure these people can't be sued. This is your profession. You know that, Fergus, more than anybody else. So then
exactly.
You can't not know where it comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to ask.
Exactly, Carlton. Okay, I remember going to a celebrity party on behalf of the Mail, and they gave me a handbag that had a recording device in the handbag. And they told me to get said celebrity in the bathroom and record that, right? Right. But all I'd say though, yes, that was complete shit. But maybe that was another time.
But you see, there's no higher plane in that. If they would have said to you, okay, this celebrity, whoever that person is, it's immaterial who that person is, this celebrity, get him in the bathroom because he's selling secrets to, let's say it's still the Cold War, he's selling secrets to the Soviets, and we need to get that information from him, or he's trying to cause strife on the streets of the United Kingdom, or whatever. All they're trying to do is just sell newspapers. That's the problem. There's no ground or basis to it.
This particular celebrity, all they wanted me to do was to get me in the toilets, like with him doing like some sort of drugs.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I don't think anybody does that anyway.
When half of them are taking drugs.
Yeah. I mean,
to the other side to that coin, half of them are taking drugs.
The interesting thing about sorry, I was just going to say the interesting thing for me as somebody who really observes human behaviour is that, and the thing with Harry is how he's been treated, now because he's exposing bad practice, illegal practice. But he has attended this country alone with no spousal support. You know, he has very much been by himself in a very public arena. And for me, that nobody's appreciating how difficult that would be for him. Yeah. All the media has focused, isn't it difficult for William and Kate? Isn't it difficult for Charlie? Exactly. You know, how so disrespectful. Nobody's this man, he's never going to get rid of the PTSD. Never ever. It never leaves you.
And also, I mean, you know, Rach, like me and Carlton, I mean, we've spoken on many podcasts about how we support Harry. Yeah. Right, and actually, my kids call Meghan they call Meghan Sparkles. But one of the loveliest things about the book, which so many journalists have written things about the book, and are not actually read it.
Yeah. I can imagine that. Yeah.
One of my favourite things about the book is in the final chapter. He delivered his daughter.
Yeah.
He actually delivered his daughter. Now, I've had 4 children. My husband's never delivered any.
He's not a prince, is he? Don't call him down. Don't call your husband down for that.
No, I don't, because to be honest, I'd rather he was on the top end, to be honest.
Wait, Carlton, have you delivered a baby? Have you delivered? Let's just see if Carlton.
No, I've never delivered one either. So that makes 2 of us. So yeah. I've never delivered.
He was, when his daughter was born, he delivered his daughter.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe not given to every man to have those rights, but maybe it is.
Let's just circle back to the menopause and all that.
Yeah, we must do because I'm looking at times, and this will be part 2, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. You listened to part 1 earlier, so we're just going to run through and finish on the menopause, as we're calling it. Oh, Dr. Rachel, what's the actual name again?
Andropause.
Andropause.
And you know what? But what's really tricky is that it's really difficult to actually look at serum levels of testosterone, because past a certain age as well, it binds with other hormones, and it's really tricky to see whether somebody actually has low testosterone, mediums. So it's really tricky, and this is why something else that can't be medicalized, you know. And I just think, you know, when you're looking at how somebody is, you know, how a man is feeling, it shouldn't just necessarily be about testosterone. And I have to say this as well, because I would hate for somebody to think, I can self-medicate on testosterone. There's no long-term safety studies about taking testosterone supplements from either men or women.
All right, so are individuals taking them then? Are they?
Yeah,
and then trying to combat this by taking it. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's actually, you know, even if you're getting it on prescription, you'll sign a disclaimer because there's no long-term safety studies on this. Right. And that's never been spoken about on any program that's talking for either women who are taking testosterone or, you know.
But why would women take testosterone? Sorry, that my ignorance. Why would women be taking it?
Because it solves having a low libido. Yeah, you know, purely because obviously we're a highly sex society, and I'm just laughing. I'm 45, and you know, like literally, I don't. I can't muster up the anything. Have I got low testosterone? No, I'm just tired. I just need too much in the day. But you know, that's what it's actually used for. But for those women as well, you know, they will have to sign a disclaimer because there's no long-term safety studies on it. So just wanted to get that in there before everybody think, you know, we're talking about testosterone and we're talking about the andropause, because you can buy it. You can buy it without.
Also, I'm just going to jump in because Annie, my business partner, Adapt, she's got prescribed testosterone, and because she has epilepsy.
Right. Okay.
And you know, it's one of those things. It's essentially when you get to my understanding. Okay, Dr. Rachel can back me up on this, but my understanding is that when you get to a certain age, you can have a blood test and you can have the analytics on what sort of thing you need.
Yeah.
In the most cases, HRT is prescribed, but also testosterone might be prescribed.
Yeah, I will say though as well is that because there's lots of availability now for people to do these tests themselves, through a private provider, you should really be looking at your levels over 3 months with hormones.
Right.
Is that it's not enough to get one lot of tests done. You really need to be, because they can fluctuate, they can get they are different compared to other months, and for men as well, men have a cycle as much as women do, but the male cycle is over 24 hours. Not 20.
Oh right, that's interesting.
Around 28 days. Yeah,
so it's 24 hours, so there is an actual cycle. It's 24 hours.
There is an actual cycle. Yeah.
See, right, I had 5 sisters, okay, and 5 sisters. So the reality was the women used to speak about women's things in some type of code, which I never understood. Right? Take into account, this is the old days. It's the old days. My mother would send me out for, shock of horrors now. It's on advertised on TV, but what used to be Dr. White's, and I used to have a message. It was given to me in a message. Everything else she'd say, go and get this, and this. And then she'd give me a message, which would be a piece of paper folded over a couple of times. And she'd say, hand that to the lady, to Madeline, who used to have the store. So he'd hand it to her, and she'd go into the back, and she'd put it in a paper bag, which was there.
Brown paper bag.
Exactly. Fold it up and give it to me, and I'd run back, take it back. So I was a kid, right? And one day I said, what is this thing that I'm asking for? Yeah. So I opened it up, and Dr. White, right? What the hell is this doctor stuff? I handed it in, and I took it back. But nobody ever explained anything. So we never knew anything about it. So it's not. Sometimes I hear people talk about the menopause as though men are being somehow reductive of it. It's not the case. It's just that they don't know. It's a secret that we only now see because they now advertise it on TV. So we now say, oh bloody hell, all this stuff. Yeah. But it's been secretive. It's been kept away from us. I'm of the era, by the way, you say, not my children were of that era, but I'm of the era when all of the kids were born in our family, that my father never even saw it happen because he used to have to stay downstairs whilst the doctor did his bit with, the midwife or whatever, because men didn't go into this sort of thing. It wasn't done in those days. And older people like me have still got that sort of mentality or that understanding of what went on in the old days halfway and what is now modern. So it's a strange phenomenon. But what I will tell you is I know of no man who's ever spoken of menopause.
Yeah.
So
okay. So one thing I was going to say, right? Okay, so one point that Dr. Rachel made, is obviously 1 in 2 women experience the menopause.
Mm-hmm. Only 1 in 2.
Well, no, like 1 in 2 people experience.
Not everyone. Oh, all right, 1 in 2 people, right? So women, okay.
Right. So, but also 1 in 2 people suffer cancer.
Yeah.
Right. So one point that Dr. Rachel made very eloquently was that actually, scarily, people are more comfortable talking about cancer than they are talking about the menopause.
But is this to a male or to any employer or any person?
Anyone, I think, to anyone.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah. Well, it's a lot of because, it's an admittance of getting older. I suppose that's the difference between the andropause and the menopause. Like andropause, it's a reduction in fertility, but not a curtailing of it. Whereas a menopause, it's like, that's it. Your fertile years are done. And that comes with a lot of social inferences, doesn't it? And it's like, for many women, often like they're approaching the menopause and they've just got their life back. I
thought it would have been a positive, not a negative.
Yeah. But I suppose it's because of all this, the negative connotations with it. And particularly, I think specifically when it's medicalized as well, it's almost like being, it's treated as a condition rather than a process. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting because if you speak to 50 different women, they'll have 50 different experiences of what their menopause was like.
Sure.
it is not a one size fits all, because women's bodies are all different and they all have different, experiences.
So, Dr. Rachel, could I give you the last medical word, and then I'll give Fergus the last word, and as a guy, I'll just kind of. No, I will say something, because we are talking about what we have named the manopause and what the NHS names that. So I will say something on it. But I'd like to have, so we've got the menopause for women, which means, as you said, a total cutting off. And we've got the menopause, which is a lessening, but potentially a cutting off, is what you seem to be saying. So now, the one thing that I did want to look at was, what's with the fact that when you take steroids, how is that? Is that not testosterone?
No, steroids aren't it isn't testosterone. No. So it is. Well, I suppose it depends. It depends what kind of steroids you're taking.
Because a lot of guys are taking this obviously to be stronger and etc. etc.
Yeah.
And I thought the testosterone makes you stronger. So what's the difference?
Well, yeah, it's not. It makes you have more stamina, makes you have more energy, makes you have sort of a different form of energy. You can, so therefore you're more likely to build up muscle mass because of the prevailing conditions. And it also makes you more heightened sexually. It's one of the sexual hormones.
Right.
And it makes you want to be more protective. It makes you more territorial. That kind of thing.
Because the most famous guy on this is that guy from up north.
Oh God, yeah.
Again,
who was found out to be a fraud.
who was taking, you know what he's called, the bloke who was taking it and then went to kill his ex-wife, but killed the police officer, and they just had the TV program. What's he called?
Raoul Moat.
Yeah. He was taking steroids, and they say that that's the thing that turned him absolutely very, very aggressive and very territorial for his ex, etc., etc., etc. So you're explaining that. Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, and really interesting for women as well. I have to say that particularly nursing mothers, oxytocin is not just this nice, shiny, happy hormone. When women feel threatened and they've got high levels of oxytocin, that actually turns them aggressive as well.
Interesting.
To protect their young, to protect their territory. Yeah. So, I mean, everything is for a reason. This is why we really shouldn't be messing with, unless we know there's a deficit. And this is what I say to people, unless you know you are living in the perfect environment, don't assume there's something wrong with you, because most people, and this sort of loops back to the Prince Harry thing as well. He's acting really normally in a very abnormal situation, and he has done from a very young age. What he's doing is normal. His body and brain are reacting normally to abnormal situations, and that's what most people in life are actually doing. So that one thing that they need to do, so from a perspective, is like, make your environment kinder, make it nicer, make it more nurturing and supportive of you. Don't immediately assume there's something wrong with you. The first assumption should be there's something wrong externally to me, and that's why I'm feeling or behaving the way that I am doing.
That's fantastic. Would that be what you would like to close your medical analysis on? Obviously, you can come up with any other analysis. And that's interesting. And I would like for listeners to, obviously, if you want to get in touch with Dr. Rachel, because she's touched on some massive points here, and you want to get in touch with her, please contact myself or Fergus, or Dr. Rachel will put your info on. So people can contact you as well. And any questions you might have, which Dr. Rachel might be able to answer by coming back onto the show at some stage. I mean, this will be 2 episodes. So we're speaking in the part 2, if you will. But, so when people listen to both parts, they may well come back with some questions to what you've said. Fergus, where do you sit?
All I'd say was, as you know, I mean, Carlton, the thing is, like, we are such huge fans of Dr. Rachel. Like, we've possibly misquoted her on a few episodes.
Well, you did.
I know. Like there's been many a time when I've said, yeah, you know what, you're wrong, podcast husband, because you're wrong, because Dr. Rachel said this, and maybe it wasn't exactly true, but I would say one thing that Dr. Rachel says to everybody is, you show me your environment and I will show you your future.
Yeah.
And this is so true.
Mm-hmm.
This is so true. And so I would just encourage any listeners to get in touch with Dr. Rachel. We'll share the contact details. She's got some amazing courses that you can just get in on and do. And some of the things are just so simple. They're so simple.
Indeed, what I will do, I will ask Dr. Rachel to write some of the spiel for me, which I put on the show, so individuals can and do know what Dr. Rachel is actually articulating around these issues. So I'll ask you to do that for me, Dr. Rachel. If you can send me that would be fantastic.
Will do, definitely.
As for me, as the mere male, I found this very, very interesting, because I am of the belief now that it's actually quite dangerous to be a male. And I think that we have to be very, very careful in Western society that we're not having everybody fighting everybody. In terms of, the fracturing of the society, something that I worked to prevent when others were trying to fracture society to bring about what they wanted to bring about. I think it's actually being done now at a massive scale, particularly via your profession, Fergus, if I may say. It sells papers, of course it does, but what they're doing is undermining the whole system. And I don't think that it's positive.
No.
I think we're splitting people up into too many different parts.
Yeah.
And all of those parts seem to be warring against each other now.
Yeah.
And it can only be a recipe for disaster. And when I look back into my AI programs which we did previously, this is the sort of danger that I was speaking about, when the machines, which are taught like us, but then have the capacity to take from us away from us what they don't want. When they may come around and say, you know what, this species is dangerous. And I don't think it should be allowed to control itself. That, I think, is one of the dangers that we potentially run to, because I can't see how any sane system that thinks in any way rationally would think that what we're doing is rational.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that the polarization of society is the greatest threat. And and just sort of sticking up for Fergus, I don't think my profession is innocent in all of this either, Carlton.
Very true. Absolutely. And neither is mine. None of them are. Because at the end of the day, I think we're all run by the hierarchy of greed.
Exactly. I've wrote so much about greed, and it's really interesting you say that, because I say other examples of hoarding in society, we say they've got a mental health disorder, but the hoarding of money we think is okay. It's the same mechanism in the brain. You hoard money, then it's the same as if you hoard newspapers. It's the same mechanism.
When Carlton first said, let's talk about the manopause, he'd actually said, let's talk about Philip Schofield, let's sort of celebritize it. Personally, when I look at my own husband, right, he kind. No, I am being kind. There are nights when he says to me, again, I'm trying to be kind. There's nights when he's like, sweetheart, I just need to sleep in another room. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's great that you've identified it and ring-fenced it. And he he's got. I mean, Dr. Rachel knows about all of this, but he's sort of developed this like sinus thing that the NHS can't help him with. But he won't go and get help.
Right.
And so when we go back to the menopause conversation, right? This sinus thing, I reached out to Dr. Rachel and she actually just gave him some really helpful supplements and that. But men, typically, if there's something that is wrong, won't go and get help because they think it's a burden or a bother or.
No, well, let me say
they just think men should just deal with it, right?
Let me say what we tend to think it is. And because you've come to a very good point on which we can end, because we talk about the menopause. I think what it is we are told, the same way when I suggested with the driving, etc., we are told that we need to deal with our issues ourselves as a general rule. We originally start off with not crying, not passing our info to others, not passing our problems to others, etc., etc. So you find a lot of guys, if a suicide has happened, they say, I never knew. Whereas I would imagine, and I'm imagining now, so I don't want to speak for women, I imagine with a woman, somebody might say, well, we had an inkling because she spoke to us. Men are not, and do not, as a general rule, I'm generalising, pass the issues to others. And that can be damaging. Well, it's no doubt it is damaging. And most of us tend to do it, particularly of a certain age. So those menopausing now will be of that certain age that they won't be articulating any potential problems that they might have, purely and simply because that's not what a man does.
Well, okay, so I it's really, really, really painless for your listeners right now, okay? I'm going to make this super painless for your listeners, right? If they want to get in touch with Dr. Rachel to talk about the menopause and their symptoms, she will probably prescribe them with some supplements, like she did for my husband, which will be very cheap and painless and probably make a world of difference. So I'm going to say, as my parting gift to your listeners, right, just like, it's not that hard. I would hopefully Dr. Rachel can just back me up on how how painless the experience is.
Yeah, I don't like causing pain and suffering. I generally want, just want people to actually live the life that they want to live. So it's not painful at all. It's literally, tell me how you're feeling, tell me what your life is like, and I can suggest things that actually will make it better.
And on that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll hear from you next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.